I'm Shelley Till, and welcome to this edition of the Tri-State Report, a program brought to you to discuss the impact and response of the effects of COVID-19 in the tri-state area and beyond. My first guest is President and CEO of the Dubuque Chamber of Commerce, Molly Grover. Welcome, Molly.
Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to see you and those nice, bright flowers in the background. I love it's a sign of spring.
It is a sign of spring, and certainly hoping that you're well and safe and healthy.
Yes, I am, and you as well. So, Molly, let's get into it because the governor just today on this Friday, May 8th, has announced the opening of more retail businesses in Dubuque County amongst several others. What does that look like for us? What businesses can now be legally open?
Well, we're certainly encouraged by that. The Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce, our board of directors, wants to make sure that we are following the guidelines put in place by our state and by our leaders. And so that announcement today includes about 6 different sectors. So you have retail, you have malls, you have gyms by appointment, you have campgrounds, drive-ins, dentists, and medical spas.
And so what have you heard in terms of those businesses preparing to be able to be open safely according to the required or the suggested guidelines, I should say?
Sure. That's certainly first and foremost in everyone's mind, balancing safety, our health, and balancing our economy at the same time. And that's everyone's priority, is how do we do that in a safe and a great process. So what we're hearing from our business community is, one, we did a survey and we're sending it out again today as well. But most of our businesses are telling us that they do in fact have their own reopening strategy. And so for a reopening strategy, I don't think you can paint one broad stroke and say that covers everyone, because it's really specific maybe to industry. And also then if you're a business owner or manager or leader, you might have specific thoughts related to that as well. The governor might say, okay, it's okay to reopen, but some businesses might say, you know what, we're a restaurant and we're going to continue offering and takeout. I think it's a very personal decision, but we're encouraged by the reopening announcements. And we're really directing our businesses to, there's a Safe at Work booklet that we have that's on our chamber website that anyone can access. You can print it off. It's there for viewing all the time. And we're continuing to have conversations with our business community because it's going to look different for different sectors.
And Molly, what can you say? I know you've been extremely busy and pivoting in how you interact with your chamber members and other businesses in the area. So talk about some of those advocacy efforts you have been implementing during this time.
Thank you so much. Like so many, the chamber went from having that physical presence to working remotely to offering our programs and services in different ways. Advocacy is a huge thing that a chamber does. So there's advocacy in the purest sense, which is lobbying and being the voice of business. And as you can imagine, over the past 2 months, it has been just incredible, the amount of advocacy that we've been doing. We've worked with all our federal offices on nearly a daily basis with Senator Ernst's office, Senator Grassley's office, Representative Finkenauer's office. I have yet another conference call with the governor's office later today, working with the IEDA, working with our local leaders as well, and writing lots of letters. So some of our specific advocacy from a chamber standpoint when it comes to policy, before the CARES Act was passed, we were on the front lines working with our legislators, letting them know that we need to act right now. We need to get relief to our business community and to our economy. And then there was the phase 3 funding package, communicating what that CARES Act meant and creating a webinar with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Additional advocacy efforts, lobbying for our casinos. One of the challenges right now is no city in Iowa is eligible for funding based on the CARES Act. You had to be a population over 500,000. There's only 34 cities nationwide that meet that threshold. So we're lobbying for them. We are lobbying for our museums, the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. So there are so many moving parts to this. And it changes not even by the day, but by the hour sometimes. I know I just said a lot, but there is a lot going on from an advocacy standpoint.
Yeah, obviously extremely busy from the, as you mentioned, from the operations government side of policy. Take us down to more of a local level in terms of what you have been able to do to advocate for the businesses who are really struggling the most, the small mom and pops that you represent here locally.
Right. Exactly. The majority of our chamber members, like you said, are small businesses. And so from a Chamber of Commerce standpoint, our role is to serve, promote, and protect our members. So you have advocacy in the pure sense that we talked about of being the voice of the business community and lobbying on behalf of public policy that impacts them. But then there's the advocacy that is about being a champion for your local business community and talking about buy local, support local, invest in local more than ever, of providing our business community the communications, the information, and the promotions that they need. So from day one, we implemented strategies so that we could make sure that we were effectively getting information out to our members. We started something, I think the very first one was on March 20th, called the Daily Dose. And that is the latest, most up-to-date information for our chamber members, links to resources, press releases that might come from the state or the federal government, if it's tips or strategies, but it's a daily e-blast that goes out to our chamber members. All those daily doses are located on our chamber website. We provided virtual webinars, and our members continually come to our events and support what's going on. We've had Debbie Durham, the director of the Iowa Economic Development Authority. We've had the U.S. Chamber. We've had an air service forum. We've had just wonderful opportunities, and all those are available on our chamber website, member or non-member, for them to access, making sure that we are promoting our members so that let's invest in our local businesses now more than ever. And so on Facebook, we created this new Facebook group, I Heart Dubuque, Shop Local, Buy Local. It was originally promote restaurants because they were closed. But then it evolved into all businesses. We started Barry's Bites, and I know you interviewed my colleague a few weeks ago. And he is so entertaining, and he's going out to our local restaurants and then filming it and videoing it to continue to promote the buy local, support local. It has just been, tremendous to see the support that we're getting from that particular little segment.
I've been on there myself. It's wonderful when I'm wondering where to go to eat for the evening. So, and Barry has been great. And you're right, we have had them. I wish we had more time to catch up. Hopefully, as we move forward and start to reopen things, we can have you back on. But Molly, this has been a wealth of information. Thanks for your time.
Shelley, thanks so much. Stay safe, stay strong, and let's stay in business together, Dubuque.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
After the break, we have City Manager Mike Van Milligen. Welcome back. I'm Shelley Till, and joining me now is Dubuque City Manager Mike Van Milligen. Mike, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Shelley, for inviting me.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Obviously, everyone across the country is really dealing with the ramifications of this COVID-19 virus outbreak. But I want to know from your perspective, in terms of the city of Dubuque, what has the impact been?
Well, since I've been the city manager in Dubuque, we've had 7 presidential disaster declarations, from floods and tornadoes, but we've never seen anything like this. And of course, neither has anyone else. And so the impacts are just tremendous. The emotional impacts of everybody trying to shelter in place is one thing to deal with from an organizational perspective, but of course, from a community perspective. And then, of course, all the fear that's generated about the unknown of the impact on your family or somebody that you know and love. is creating a lot of uncertainty for people. And then the economic impacts are just staggering. So all the small businesses closed down, and everybody trying to support them in some way. And we look at our city organization, and we're looking at losing over $15 million in revenues. And we're a small town. $15 million in lost revenues is huge.
Mike, can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think people don't really quite understand, how does a city government make their money, and what is contributing to the loss of such a gross amount of revenue?
Well, one thing, think about how often you've gotten a tank of gas in the last 2 months, maybe once, and maybe not at all. So you're not paying any road use tax fund money. So that's money that supports our ability to fix the streets and plow the streets and things like that. And then think about the last time you went to the store to buy anything. Well, you might say, well, gee, I went to the pharmacy. Well, okay. And rightfully so, pharmaceuticals are not, there's no sales tax. And then you might say, well, I went to the grocery store. Well, rightfully so, groceries, there's no sales tax. When was the last time you went and bought a pair of shoes? Well, you haven't. And so you're not paying any sales tax. And we get a tremendous amount of revenue from sales tax. And then there's all kinds of other things. Since the businesses downtown are shut down, people aren't parking in our parking ramps. And so that we're not getting any parking revenues. So it touches all kinds of different revenues.
And thank you for clarifying that, because I think people don't even realize, the impact that has had. What about in terms of city employees? How has this impacted that aspect?
Well, we've been so fortunate. Our IT department, I don't know how they did it. Immediately we had an incident actually at City Hall. So before all the orders about shutdowns, we had an employee who was symptomatic. So we shut down City Hall. We had it completely disinfected, but then we still did not let anybody come back in. And it turned out the person did not have COVID-19, so that's wonderful. But the shutdown had already happened. So almost overnight, our IT department had to transition all our employees to work from home. And right now, of our 700 employees, we have almost 100 who are working from home, not only from City Hall, but now other city buildings. But of course, you got to think about the rest of our 600 employees. They're police officers, they're firefighters, they're refuse collection employees, they're public health nurses. They all are working, and they're on the front lines of this. And so there's that impact of our desire to keep them safe. But yeah, I've been so proud of our organization of how we've shifted into a completely different mode of operation and services on a dime, and have not missed a beat.
Mike, with such declines in revenue and being in a deficit, as you mentioned, how do you absorb that? What is the plan to move forward in terms of not only reopening, but how do you absorb those costs, and how does that trickle down to city employees such as firefighters, police officers, and the like?
Well, we have a very supportive workforce, and fortunately, we have a very fiscally responsible mayor and city council. So we have reserves. We have $17 million in general fund reserves. And so that's going to tide us over. But you have to remember, you have to have reserves. So we can't spend those and then say, okay, well, that's good. Now we don't have to replace them. So we're still looking for federal and state assistance to avoid what would be a catastrophic economic condition for our organization. But the employees have stepped up. So our 5 unions all agreed to not take a pay raise. And that saved us $750,000 in expenses next budget year. The mayor and council just approved next year's budget. For us, that next year starts July 1st. That's our fiscal year. And they approved we'll have the lowest property tax rate of the 11 cities in the state of Iowa that have a population greater than 50,000. So they've been fiscally responsible from that perspective. We have frozen all of our vacant positions, so we're not filling those. We've frozen all our travel and training. We won't be doing any of that. We've frozen any capital projects that already are not funded from a grant or some other source. And we've frozen any equipment purchases. So we won't be replacing equipment that we plan to replace. And then we formed 4 employee committees, and they're analyzing every quarter, July 1st, October 1st, January 1st, and April 1st, They're going to analyze our financial situation, and we're going to see what can we do each quarter. Gee, could we do a capital project we didn't think we could do? Could we hire a police officer we didn't think we could hire? Because nobody really knows what's going to happen with these revenues. They're going to try and open the economy back up. How quickly are the revenues going to start coming back? Right now, our projection is a loss of over $15 million in revenues. I don't know. What if that's 25 million? What if it's 10? I'll guarantee you nobody can answer that question for me. So that's why we've got these 4 employee committees examining this on a quarterly basis.
Lots of unknowns across the board for everyone. What would you say are your major concerns as we move forward?
Well, there is absolutely no doubt that my first major concern is the health of individuals in our community. My second major concern is the health of our city employees. I cannot believe we've been so fortunate with 700 employees, hundreds and hundreds of them on the front lines of this, the police officers, the firefighters, the refuse collection employees. We've not had one COVID-19 case. And of course, we're worried if that were to happen. We run the water plant. What if all our water plant employees were stricken with COVID-19? We have contingency plans, Mac. Every single department. 2 weeks ago, we had a 4-hour public meeting with the city council where every single department presented their contingency plan. So our city council and our citizens, because that was televised, know we have contingency plans if something were to happen. For instance, all our water department employees were stricken with COVID-19. But thank goodness, my biggest fear is that someone will get sick. No one has yet within our organization. So we've been blessed that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful news. And we hope that it continues that way as things continue to progress and towards a more open. I know you're opening up your offices starting after May 15th into June 1st. But Mike, thank you for being here and updating us on this very important information. And we look forward to seeing you in person sometime very soon.
Thank you for inviting me, Shelley.
You bet. Up next, Danielle Peterson, the CEO of United Way, will be joining us. Welcome back to the Tri-State Report. I'm Shelley Till. Joining me now is Danielle Peterson, President and CEO of the United Way of the Dubuque area and the Tri-States. Nice to see you again, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for having me. I appreciate that. Good morning.
Absolutely. You have received, the Dubuque County United Way has received some more funding from FEMA. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. So each year, specific phases of FEMA roll out, and United Way is lucky enough to be able to be the distributor and the kind of the convener in the community for distributions of those federal funds. Our county, Dubuque County specifically, has agreed to use our FEMA funding solely for food needs, meeting food needs here locally across the county. So we were notified that our FEMA funds this year include our Phase 37 funding, as well as some additional funding through the CARES Act. So that means the total we'll be able to allocate this year will be $76,000, just a little over.
Wonderful. And what is, right now, obviously going through this, but can you explain the need, why this is so particularly important right now?
Sure. A lot of people need to access things such as food through the food pantry here in Dubuque County or other food pantries out in the county, or free meals at Dubuque Area Labor Harvest on Saturdays. They have hot breakfasts or baskets of food from the Salvation Army or Dubuque Area Labor Harvest. People access those frequently throughout the year just because there's a need. We have a high ALICE population, which is an asset, this is an acronym, asset limited, income constrained, and employed. That ALICE population we have, including our people who are unfortunately under the federal poverty guidelines, is about 27% of households across our area. So 27% of people are working, but having a very difficult time making ends meet. So when they need help with food, there are organizations like this that are able to help support them and get them by in a pinch. Now, coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic, where people's futures are uncertain and maybe they've lost wages or they're anticipating lost wages, it's really shaping the way our households look. And unfortunately, we have people who have never accessed services before who need to use these services. And I'm so grateful that we have them available to people. And I want to make sure that people know it's okay. And, we have these things here for a reason. So we have people delivering meals to those who can't leave their homes. And, it's a hard time for those of us who are in isolation and taking care of ourselves, but it's also a really hard time for our providers too. So
Yes.
this money will be helpful.
Yeah. You mentioned a few of the organizations. Can you give us an example or maybe it's just some criteria? Who can apply to utilize these funds?
Sure. So any nonprofit who is a 501c3 and who does food distribution like this would be eligible to apply for funding. They need to have an annual audit because that's something that's required by FEMA, as well as a volunteer board of directors that helps guide their organizational mission and things. And then they also will need to submit, of course, a budget and some planning about that through the application.
And where can they go to get that information to see if they qualify?
Yeah, so we do have that information right on our webpage, our dbqunitedway.org. And across that website for United Way, one of the banners will read FEMA funding available. And the people who are interested, those organizations, click read more. The grant link is right in there. So they have the opportunity to request funding from Phase 37 or CARES Act funding or both. So people can just kind of go on and fill out the information and upload from there. And these are actually due though by May 25th at 5. So that's a pretty tight deadline, and we have to hold true to that deadline. So no applications can be accepted after that.
Sure. And what have you heard or what do you know in terms of the turnaround time that organizations, if they qualify, would receive those funds?
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually have a local FEMA board that we convene. We're convening it that same week so that we can hurry up and get these funds distributed to the community who needs so that they can access them, since we know that the need is there. Places who apply can expect to be notified the week after. So early June, that would be notifications will go out then.
Very good. You touched on something earlier, and I want to go back to that because I think you mentioned that there's a lot of people that are having this need for the first time. I also think that what goes along with that is a lot of stigma. Mm-hmm. People feel bad that they are in this type of need. What can you say to those people who might be watching this that are in this kind of position for the first time?
Yeah, and it's a humbling experience, and I've needed some help before too. Everyone needs help in some way. As it relates to food needs, I encourage people to access the resources that are available because that's why they're here, and then encourage others to do so should they need those services. And then the other thing is to pay. I always say this, no matter what the service or support is, but pay it forward. If you find yourself in a good situation and hopefully better situation soon, go back and volunteer at that organization, write them a note, offer to help with your neighbor with some of their needs, for example. I mean, there's always ways to continue to pay that positivity forward. And hopefully, I think that helps our hearts a little bit, our hearts lighten a little bit where that's concerned.
It's great advice, Danielle. Tell us about, and aside from the FEMA funds, you have just determined the allocation of your regular United Way funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually just announced those awards last week, where we actually awarded $850,000 to our typical, we call it a nonprofit partner kind of funding application. So we had grant awards for that funding that was open in January and February for applications. And then our team of investment review panelists ranked and scored and made decisions and funding recommendations. And we were able to announce those awards last week. And again, those are funds that will be available to those organizations year round. So it's broader than just food. It kind of fits 3 pillars in our community. So health, education, and then financial stability. So basic needs are kind of webbed in there. So like housing and food needs. And so specific to food, that we actually were allocating an additional nearly $105,000 for food needs that will be kind of dispersed and supported throughout our 10-county tri-state area.
Very good. Well, Danielle, thank you for being here and giving us that update and sharing the additional funding that's available for people. And the application you said was due by May 25th.
Yep. May 25th at 5 p.m. and it's on our website. And I would just encourage, if I can do one quick plug, because we're talking about food needs, if people have a food need and they're maybe embarrassed or, we talked about that stigma, call our 211 information and referral line. They will tell you exactly where you can go to find the resources you need. And in many cases, that can be delivered to your door. We are proud to have like a no judgment nonprofit network, and I want people to access it while we have it available.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. It was great to see you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Have a great day.
And now it's time to end on a positive note. Joining me is Riley Hasken from FGC Creative. Riley, nice to see you.
Hi, Shelley. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Riley, you have taken it upon yourself to utilize your company, your business, to do something good, and you formed a fundraiser called COVID Relief. How did you come about the idea?
Yeah, so at FGC Creative, we're a brand management company. We do anything from screen printing, web design, marketing. So in times like this, when everything was slowing down and we had to figure out what can we do, we decided that we were going to pool our resources together and really help those in need. And one of the areas that we saw really needed our help were the frontline healthcare workers. They're going to fight for us each day with unmatched courage. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to really do what we can to help these people. So we partnered with Direct Relief. It's one of the largest humanitarian charities in the United States. And they are providing the necessary PPE to these frontline healthcare workers. So we got a hold of them, and we basically just asked what we could do to help. And what we came up with is that we started selling T-shirts as a fundraiser, where 100% of the profits are going directly to Direct Relief. So with that, we just launched a website and put that out there for the community to help out.
And where can people go to buy a T-shirt and help support your cause?
Yeah, absolutely. That's www.covidrelief.com. And those shirts are $20, and 100% of the profits are going directly to Direct Relief.
And how long has this been active?
So we officially signed our agreement with Direct Relief on April 22nd, excuse me. And it will be going until July 22nd.
Okay. So how's it going so far? How much money have you been able to raise, Riley?
Great. We are nearing $10,000 raised so far. So that's able to get that necessary PPE out to some of these different clinics and hospitals across the globe. So we're not quite to our goal so far, which is $1 million, but we have until July 22nd. So we're just going to keep pushing it and keep trying to get people on board to help.
And you mentioned helping the frontline workers. Is there anywhere specifically geographically that your efforts are being targeted, or is that up to Direct Relief?
So they're actually helping out 1,700 institutions across the globe right now. So they're deciding exactly where that PPE is going, but there are hundreds of them in the Midwest, actually.
Very good. Well, Riley, this is a wonderful, very noble cause. Thanks for shifting gears with your business and doing whatever you can to help our frontline workers. We appreciate your time.
Oh, of course. We're doing what we can. Thank you, Shelley.
Take care.
Bye.
That's it for this edition of the Tri-State Report. Please join me every Friday at 6 p.m. and again on Saturday at 11 and Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Stay safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.